Welcome to episode 3 of A Reading Rainstorm as the Wheel Wills. As we deep dive into episode 3 of The Wheel of Time, me and Tim Sanders are going to take our book review and go against the TV show and tell you what our thoughts are up to this point. So, Tim, how's it going?
Oh, it's going dandy. I've actually done more research for this one than I did the last one, so I want to apologize to everybody for the last episode. I was woefully unprepared. This time, however, I got you.
Heck yeah, that's all right. I didn't want to do a disservice to our clientele and consumers of this episode. So just to rip the Band-Aid off right away, we were absolutely wrong in our assumptions that anything in this series so far has happened in Book 2. Everything as we know it, as we have seen, currently relates to Book 1, The Eye of the World. And if you want to...
About chapter 25-ish? With the way that things are playing, it's kind of hard to pinpoint an exact chapter.
Yep.
But it's 25-ish.
Okay. I have 32 written down in my notes as well. So I think that they touch base on a couple things that happened in 32.
Yeah, and that's where it kind of gets, because some of the characters are still farther back, and so that's why I threw the ish. We're going to throw a 7-chapter give or take.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. So we're on episode 3 of 8. So there is going to be a total of 8 episodes this season, and we are on the ish chapters of between 25 and 32 with a total of 53 chapters in the book. So we'll see if they kind of circle back and go through more of the stuff that they've kind of glanced over to this point, or if they plan on taking it into maybe, I don't know. I don't think they're going to do Book 2. I think they're going to stick specifically to Book 1, and that information is probably out there, but we're just literally going off of our book knowledge to what we have seen.
Correct. And this episode, they started to really diverge from the books as I'm going through all my notes from Book 1. They skipped an entire city.
Yeah, there's a whole city missed. There's a couple characters missed. I have those names written down that we can touch base on and get to them. So I also do want to make a note that I didn't finish the last about 5 minutes of the show, and it didn't end with them just getting into Shadow Logoth last episode. In episode 2, it ended with them actually getting dispersed in Shadow Logoth from a shadow thing called Mashadar. I don't think they ever gave it its name in the show, but the name of that shadow that was that consumed the horse is Mashadar. And with Matt finding the dagger as well. Mordeith was the person who was supposed to lure him to the dagger and the treasure, and Matt and Perrin were supposed to be with him. And I vividly remember that scene in the book because it was didn't that guy, when he finally got Matt to get the dagger, like expand and like blow up almost?
Yeah, it
was a weird scene.
In the book, it was a really creepy scene, actually.
Yeah,
like I remember reading it and going, "Ooh, all right, this is the type of book we're into."
Yeah. I the book is pretty dark if you think about it, and I never really thought about it in that way because I'm used to like Lord of the Rings, which is also kind of dark as well, a little bit, not as much, not as badly. But yeah, the scare factor and the creepiness of the show as a whole, like that's not how I painted it in my mind, but it truly is.
Correct. Yeah, and as far as like the show goes for dark, it's definitely not as dark as the books have been. The show is just not as, I don't know, I guess they're not as bleak, if that's the word that you would use.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, as I was going through my notes, I realized we missed an entire city. We missed some characters, and actually a pretty big character was missed, in the way of Min. And we also missed a really awesome battle scene with Moraine.
Okay. I didn't know that Min was missed. That was when they were staying at the Stag and Lion, right?
Yeah, and Min came down, and
yeah,
she's actually a pretty big character to miss.
Yeah, huge character. In fact, I also have written down Bail Domon. He was the,
Yeah, he's not in it either, and I love him.
yeah, he's a repeating character throughout the series. So he was the one who took away Matt and Rand, and Tom Maryland, who was just introduced, but in the book he was there at the Maritime Festival, or sorry, Belltime Festival, and was a part of the Trolloc attack.
Right. Yeah, Tom was with them should have been with them this entire time.
Right.
And from like a character, like introducing too many character standpoints, I kind of get where the show's coming from.
Yeah.
By not introducing him right then, but you're missing all the heartfelt moments with Tom and like the character building. And like Matt and Rand traveling with Tom, learning how to play instruments, and there's also been no like Perrin, Matt, and Rand learning how to fight from the warders,
yep,
and you know.
Yeah.
So if all that's happening behind the scenes, I'd just kind of like it to be glanced on, but
I would agree. And same thing is that, or same thoughts about those kind of developmental pieces between the characters that are being missed. But, you know, the show does have a budget, and, you know, maybe the characters didn't want to learn how to play the flute and violin, you know, or the actors, I'm sorry, not the characters.
And I get that. It's just like the interpersonal moments that we're missing in the show, mainly due to because the show has, you said, 8 episodes for season 1?
Yep.
So, I mean, pacing alone, you've got to cut some stuff out.
Oh, absolutely. And that's also, you know, when you work in a box and with some constraints, you have to make some creative decision making. So it's not necessarily to say that this is a bad way to go about it. It's just a different way than the book. So, I mean, I have some questions like, which story do you prefer? And one of them is the whole Perrin and Layla. Every time they bring that character's name up, I'm like, oh, that's right. That was Perrin's wife. I actually appreciate that story a little bit more than just his inherent hesitation to wield the axe.
I also read into a meeting with the director of Wheel of Time, because he's gotten some flack for introducing a character and then killing her in episode 1. And
yeah,
Layla was actually introduced in the books in mentioned only. So Perrin mentions that had he stayed back in Two Rivers and none of this would have ever happened, he probably would have married a girl named Layla.
Oh.
So since the director made them all up, he thought it was appropriate to have him marry the girl that he said he would marry in the books.
You know what? That's okay. I respect that.
And
I can respect that.
I was a big what the, you know, I was not happy with the idea to marry Perrin, but after reading that,
yeah,
I'm actually full team Perrin marrying Layla.
Yeah, that's super attention to details. Probably most of us just glanced over that aspect of it. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot out there who are like, no, this was a real thing, but completely missed by me.
Also missed by me. The only reason I knew it is because I happened to read an interview that he had, because he was getting all the flack.
Mm-hmm.
And since I was also in that team, why would you do this to my Perrin? You know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it does add that huge developmental piece to his character pretty quickly. So again, time budget and episodic.
And you can't really show Perrin's like inner monologues where he's talking about, you know, like how he hates the axe because he, you know, killed White Cloaks with it, and how he feels animalistic. So it's a good way to bypass all the inner thinking that Perrin does in his head.
That's very true.
He's a big thinker.
Yeah, he's big thinker. He thinks through everything very detailed, so detailed that people actually think that he's a little slow, but he never acts without thinking through things.
Correct.
So we have that. We already touched base on Tom, so let's get into Tom a little bit for his story. I would have preferred it if he was there at the Belltime Festival versus how they actually have met him currently at a random, I don't even think they gave the city a name yet, but at this random city, they meet Tom, who's, you know, doing his Glee Man thing, and he has no mustaches. None.
He has no mustaches.
Like every scene where they're describing Tom Maryland, and the habits that he has, like Nynaeve pulling at her braid every 2 minutes, Tom blows out his mustaches, but he has no mustaches, and he, from what I could tell, didn't have a limp.
Didn't the limp come from later on in the book, though, when he attacks a shadow friend?
Maybe.
Isn't that where the limp came from?
It could have been. It could be. But I thought he always had the limp from like
He's
a previous.
Also old, and so in the show they have him a little bit younger than I would have liked.
Do you know who would have played a really good Tom Maryland, just based off of the character they selected? Woody Harrelson.
You know,
if they
I wouldn't be mad at that.
If they could have gotten Woody Harrelson to play Tom Maryland, that would have been pretty spot on casting.
I would not have been mad at that.
No.
One of the things that, just from this show that for Tom is Tom's a little bit more lively of a person. You know, he's not like this sour. You know, he's not a South Pole elf. You know.
Yeah. He's extravagant and a romantic.
Correct. And this kind of has him as, you know, a Sour Patch Kid.
It really does. It really does. I'm
listening. If you get my references, good on you.
I'm interested in where they take him. Obviously, Tom's a big character, and I really like him. So I really hope they develop that a little bit more.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's episode 3, so we've got 5 to go. For those that have read the books, we all know what's going to happen to Tom. So I'm kind of curious on how they're going to play that based on where we are at the end of episode 3.
End of episode 3 is with Liandrin hauling away the false dragon Logain.
Correct.
And Logain looks pissed.
Yeah. I also like who they picked for Logain because he has this presence about him. That when the first guy that we were introduced that had the power didn't have that presence to him, but Logain looks like somebody that would command an army, and I like it.
Yeah,
I like it a lot.
Yeah. I was very, very pleased with him and even Liandrin. Liandrin looks like, you know, the boss ass bitch that she is.
Yeah, she has a serious case of RBF.
Yeah.
But it looks like she has power and she knows how to use it.
She ain't taking no from no one.
Just the way like her jaw is set and like when she's a little intimidating. That's just watching the show and I'm a little intimidated by her.
Right. Backtracking a little bit, getting into Perrin, or not Perrin, sorry. We'll get to Perrin and Egwene, but Mat and Rand. So, you know, one of the big differences here is this is where I was saying chapter 32, this is kind of like the ending, or as far as it got, was when Rand uses the power for the first time. In the book, you know, Mat and Rand were cornered by this traitor, and he shows himself as a dark friend, which is the innkeeper in the show. And Rand calls in a bolt of lightning, blinds everybody, and allows for Mat and Rand to escape. And in the show, he muscles down a door of ironwood without much explanation as to what really just happened.
Correct. Like, you start to wonder, was she wrong about that door, or was she just trying to mess with it? Like, there's no real, hey, he used the power.
And there's no big shock factor. I mean, like, she had kind of like a stunned look on the face, like, how did that just happen? But like, kind of not climactic. Just kind of, oh, look, he did it. Yay.
Right.
So that was kind of a bummer for Rand's first utilization of the power, but I mean, it's a build-up, so we'll get there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm going to be very upfront with this. I'm a little nervous that they're going to make a drastic change from the books. Realistically, I can't see them doing it, but I'm a little nervous And I don't know if that's just the director's way of keeping us who have read the books on our toes. But I'm very nervous that they're going to make not Rand be the Dragon Reborn.
Ooh. Wow. Okay. That would be huge. That would be a monumental twist.
Right. So I don't know if that's just the way the director is keeping us who know the story on our toes.
Well, who do you think they're picking then?
So,
who do you think that they're kind of leaning towards, or just kind of up in the air right now?
I think they're leaning towards one of the girls, either Egwene or Nynaeve.
That'd be insane. That would be crazy.
And in the books, they both can use the power, because they eventually become Aes Sedai. Spoilers alert. But if you didn't see that coming,
Interesting.
What are you doing?
I guess right away in the beginning, it did say that when Moiraine was looking for them, she couldn't find, or she was looking for him, and the dragon has been reborn. They don't know if it's a guy or a girl, but in all of the stories, it's always been a male, and the male goes crazy because of the
male's taint on the one power.
Right.
And they brought Egwene with them because they said that she was Tanaveren.
Tal'Viren.
You say it how I say it. This is how I pronounced it since we started reading the books.
This is my first time actually hearing you say it out loud, so that was interesting.
Yeah. So that's just how my head is pronounced. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what makes sense in my head. Mm-hmm. So leave me alone.
So with Mat and Rand, we are introduced to Tom. We already said that. We're introduced to kind of their personalities, Mat and Rand's. Rand being the hard worker and kind of the good guy. Mat being the gambler and kind of taking the easy way in life as much as he possibly can. He has stolen the dagger from Shadow Logoth, and there was a moment where Rand does ask him, "Hey, are you okay?" And kind of leaning towards that downward spiral that Mat is about to take. Having stolen something from the Shadow City. So that pretty much Oh yeah, and then we're of course introduced to the first Dark Friend, which was the Innkeeper. First time we actually heard of the name Dark Friend, which are the people who follow Baal Zaman, or the Dark One. Moving on though into Perrin and Egwene. So they're traveling across the Outlands there, and they meet the Tinkers.
Correct. They're also completely skipping over Elias at this point, which makes sense.
Right, that was going to be my question to you. Was Elias Machira? Was he really that important?
Well, and that's why it makes sense, because all that he did is explain to Perrin his wolf abilities, I guess you could call them. Yeah. Yep. And he kind of introduced Perrin to that. So if they find another way to introduce that to Perrin, Elias really isn't that vital, at least to the part where we're at in book 5.
Right, exactly. And I'll say, keeping in mind that we're only at book 5, so anything can happen in another 7 books. 8 books, another 8 books.
But as of right now, Elias, they're skipping over him, and I thought he was a cool character. But in reality, is he super necessary? Not really.
Not really. And I thought the same thing. I think, other than the wolf ability, he does take him to a steading and gives us the information that even Trollocs and Shadow Friends and Dark Friends, they can't or won't enter a steading because the one power cannot be used there.
Right.
So that's the big things that were kind of glanced over with the meeting of Elias. I think that Perrin's abilities do take off kind of exponentially at that point, though, because then he gains this relationship with a wolf called Hopper, and then the White Cloaks attack them, and Hopper dies. Spoiler alert.
Correct. And that's kind of the first time that Perrin goes, in the books, that Perrin goes into his quote-unquote berserker rage type deal.
And it gets the attention of the White Cloaks specifically on him. This is where it all begins.
Which is a pretty big part later on in the books.
Right. So I can't imagine that they're going to skip that. I'm sure they're just going to get rid of the Elias part, and then they're going to get surrounded by the White Cloaks with either the Tinkers or after they leave them. Oh, also the other name for the Tinkers is the Tuathawan. The Way of the Leaf.
Yeah.
Several
and they're
names for
also, though the Tinkers are very non-violent people. They don't like to pick up weapons.
They're pacifists, 100%.
Correct.
Not
That's the word I
non-violent,
was
just
looking for.
complete pacifists. They will not pick up a weapon to save their lives, their grandmother's lives, or their mother's lives. No weapons will ever be picked up, and they're in the search for a song, as they were introduced. Do you know the song?
I really liked that, actually.
Yeah, the way that that kid came out there and said, "This is what you're supposed to say." Go on now.
I'll say it.
So they're good people. All right, so I guess glancing over the couple things the couple names that we missed. So Bail Domon, we already described him, the owner of the ship that was supposed to take away Tom, Matt, and Rand, but that might actually happen because the city that they're currently in is on a port, so they might see Bail Domon in episode 4. Baalzamon, so he was in the dreams. We've already seen him, the man with fire in his eyes and mouth, but he actually has had a couple conversations at this point with the Telviran, Rand, Matt, and Perrin. He's actually talked to them, and he's been given a name. To this point in the show, we don't know who that man is. We just know that he's got crazy eyes and crazy mouth. Mordeeth and Steadings, we kind of already glanced over those. So those are like kind of the big things. And Elias Machira. Big names that we glanced over.
And don't forget Min.
Can't forget Min. Gah, can't forget her. She's huge, so she has to be coming up soon.
She has to be. I don't know how they're going. Well, I mean, I can see how they would do things without Min, but it'd be way easier if they just introduced Min.
Yeah, she also could be introduced, I guess, at a later point in the book. She doesn't have a lot of relevance, I would say, up until book 2, maybe end of book 1 into book 2, because they just kind of leave her there and then they move on.
Right. So, like I said, I can see them waiting to introduce her, and I could maybe make it work without her, but it would just be way easier if they just introduced Min.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The only other thing I guess I have for the show so far to this point, we've been talking a lot about the cool cinematography and effects that they've been using, especially with the Trollocs and the Myrddraal and the cities and the aesthetics of the show, other than Tom Maryland's mustaches. They also, as far as I could tell, the Warder's color shifting cloak.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big piece of them, but, what Lan's wearing currently just looks like a normal cloak. Doesn't really do anything fancy.
Right, because the color shifting cloak is supposed to let them blend in with wherever they're at.
Right, yeah.
But also, as long as we're on cloaks, the Gleeman's cloak, I was kind of let down with.
I would agree. When he kind of like flared it up and it looked all that patchwork on the inside of it, I was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. But I expected something like, I don't know, something really grand. Like when he threw it, like 8-foot wingspan.
Right, really grand and really ugly.
Really ugly. And not just patchworked on the inside, but patchworked on the outside as well.
Right.
Like the whole thing, just completely patchworked. Yeah, I guess my biggest disappointment so far is Tom Maryland.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because he's such a big, well-liked character. He's our number 2 favorite character, and it's something we agree on, that he's our second favorite character in the book. So
yeah, agreed. Well, all right, man. Episode 4 is already out. Episode 5 comes out today. So we got one more episode. Well, now we have 2 more episodes to catch up on, but by next week we should be in tune or in time with the show. So can't wait until we actually catch up and then get these things out weekly for you guys. If there's anything that you want us to touch base on, anything that we've missed, feel free to make a comment. These videos get posted on YouTube. Otherwise, we do have our podcast and our website, readingrainstorm.com. come there, see what we're doing. We got some blogs. We got other podcasts that we do with books. Currently reading The Scythe, getting into the Thunderhead next week. Thank you guys for coming out. Really appreciate it. See you in the next episode.